in between and integration.
It's normal that people go through daily life in a very rushed manner. So when you have the opportunity to pause, do make the effort.
How do you carry on with your life, but at the same time integrate this taking care of your parents into your lifestyle as well? Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Henri and Mike. Today is the 30th June 2022. It is a Thursday. At the moment it's about 3:56 p.m.
We are at Duxton Plain Park.
Duxton Plain Park, and there's a lot of roosters and chickens running around, so you will see that shortly. Mike, how are you?
I am fine. We're pretty busy, running quite a fair bit of errands, a lot of administrative stuff that I have to settle.
Yeah.
Thank God all that was done right now. So moving on. How about you? How's the last few days since our last episode?
We've been running around to the hospital quite a lot. So we are kind of taking a break from the visiting hours. So we walk all the way from Singapore General Hospital to this part of the town to do this week's podcast recording. And it's quite lovely weather today, actually. A lot of things happening, like YouTube is still not growing, but I'm still writing script and trying to produce, liaising with the editors. That's what's been happening.
We were mentioning in the last episode that somebody who's very close to us is going through a surgery, basically. Thank God that everything is smooth and is on a recovery stage right now. Yeah, it's a couple of days.
Yeah.
So let's see what goes on from here. I think there's a lot of things that's going to wait for us in the future, in the next couple of days and weeks.
It is not easy. It's quite challenging to go through all this motion at the moment. It's a lot of things to deal with, all the traveling back and forth, prepping everything. Yeah, but she's getting better. So it's good. We'll take a step at a time and see how things will roll from here. So Mike, what's your word for this week?
In my mind, I think it has only been a few days, but in terms of the word, what's the word for this week for me?
Yeah.
Likely to be in between. Generally in between, if you ask the Singaporean Malaysians, I think they will first think about the game, the card game. During Chinese New Year, you always play, you pull out two cards and then you try to guess the next card, whether is it really between or it's outside. So that's the first thing that people think about when it's in between. But why I bring out this in between this word is because last couple of days and even last episode, we discussed quite a fair bit about grieving, about death. To a large extent, death can be seen as an event in life, an important event and a milestone. And then when I think back about it, more often than not, people in a society will always celebrate milestones. My graduation, birthday, somebody's passing.
Certain achievement in life, basically.
Certain achievement in life. So that become one part, a reference point. And then the other reference point will then be the next event, the next milestone. So my focus this week will be the in-between of this milestone, mainly because we do realize that we are always going through a thinking, like, for instance, if you are working, you'll be like, okay, I'm thinking about the next weekend. I'm thinking about the next holiday, right? And I'm looking for the next Christmas, for instance, right? Or I'm looking towards my graduation. There will be a lot of focus and hope and expectation for something in the future. And we celebrate that milestone. At the end of that milestone, for instance, you think about it, at the end of the holiday, you will be like, oh, I hope that this holiday, will not end so soon. So there's this part about missing. But why are we doing this? How about an in-between? The mundane things you do in life. We have always been hearing things like you got to live in the moment, celebrate life in that manner. But to be honest, when I think back, we don't quite do that. We go through the day-to-day life. Sometimes we do pause a little bit and then look back, okay, today something went well. But more often than not, you're just too tired, you go to sleep, and the next day you continue the grind. So when do we actually live in that moment? What happened during that in-between? That is something that struck me as I was preparing for the next milestone. Right now, this about the worst case scenario about death. So that essentially is extension from last week. So why don't we do that? Really celebrate the day to day? Is it not worth celebrating?
It is worth celebrating. But the thing is, if you don't do something today, it will never happen tomorrow. Let's put it this way, two faults. People are more likely to either live in the past or live in the future. When you talk to a lot of people, they always kind of talk to you with regards to their aspiration, their dreams, where do they want to go, where do they want to travel, where do they want to climb in terms of their career and stuff like this, or what were their regrets from the past. And some of them can never really move on from those points. So often that we really forget about where we are, which is true. So that takes practice. And a lot of people actually say that you need to focus more on the present moment. Yes, it is easier said than done. But then when you dig further, what exactly is this moment? We're sitting right here in this beautiful park. We are talking, having a podcast recording. But then your mind is racing all the way to say, what happened if? It's always going to the loop thing. So I think when you catch yourself in those moments, you need to step back and say, hey, look, I'm here, and refocus what I'm doing. Yeah. I don't think you can ever achieve the states whereby you're really living at the present moment. This is my take, because I often get caught up in that moment as well. Like just before we got here today, I was very pissed off because like certain things doesn't work, like technical side of the SD card, or even the battery's not working, or the communication with the editor, blah blah blah, or maybe just even the YouTube growth. I mean all these worries, but those are the things that is set in the future. But I also understand that if I don't do it now, I'll never reach that future state where I want it to be. So it's about work, it's about the process, it's about a step at a time and put it out there. So I think just that whenever you catch yourself in those moments, you just say, hey, Michael, stop. I'm here right now. How can I mitigate that risk? How can I not pull myself too far into the future or not draw myself too far into the past? So in my opinion, I think that's just like a balancing act between the present, the future, and the past.
Okay. So essentially, to really summarize, the main point is it's normal that people go through daily life in a very rushed manner. So when you have the opportunity to pause, do make the effort to really take a step back and think through and appreciate the moment.
It is easier to say than to do it.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it also comes down to what exactly are you doing. Be it a job, taking care of the parents, running the errands from destination A to destination B.
I was just thinking about this. You as a person really looking at the day-to-day life. If we really set a point, maybe not on a daily basis. Of course, it'll be great if that's it's on a daily basis that you take the pause and take a check, of like what's going on that day. But if let's say at least in a week, you look back and summarize what happened, that might help you to truly make sense of that process, that progress that you have made.
It's in a reflection part,
yes,
and also like where you have achieved on that particular week.
Kind of, it's like a review, and take a few moments to go through what you can learn and what went well, what didn't go too well, and what should I work on next. And then you keep track of this path that you're taking on, so that this entire daily tasks will be more meaningful. Sounds very abstract, but ever since we started this podcast, whenever we sit down and talk, we will always try to force ourselves to think back what went through the last week or the last time we spoke. And then you really think through each and every single event and how you feel about it. So that kind of helped me to make sense, to track that progress. I think I'm still far away from living in that moment per se. It's still a very retrospective thing I'm trying to live, that particular moment. Yeah. So it will be good that maybe I can shorten the time frame, maybe really every 2 days, and then look back so that it's easier for me to make sense of what's going on and where I'm going.
James Clear, he wrote a book called Atomic Habits, right?
Yeah.
I remember one of the statements he was saying, it is about a process that also represents the present moment in a way.
Yeah.
Because to fall in love with the process, you need a system. So if let's say you want to do either weekly or every 2 days check, you need a system in place whereby it can help you to really reflect better. It's easier said right now because when you really think about it, every 2 days you need to make a conscious and say, hey, Mike, I'm going to think about what I've done in the last 2 weeks. You might not even remember that. So you need to set out a ritual, like a habit that every 2 days or every week you really sit down and write in your diary. From a pen, put it into the paper so you kind of register really deep into your brain.
Actually, I do have something like that. One is right now this podcast as a platform, as a medium so that I can think about stuff, and then I pen it down in Notion. Another one is like whenever I meet friends, for instance, right? After I talk to them, I'll have some thoughts and I'll always like pen it down. So that becomes a good way for me to think about stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I can improve more on that if I want to set a time time frame to be even shorter, I shall practice that and see how it will help me along the way.
You see, when you talk about shorten that process, but at the same time, why are you in a hurry to shorten that process? If that's what we talk about present moment, it's about enjoying that process, going through that motion to really let it settle within you.
I think why I say that, shorten a little bit is because, let's just take this podcast for example. Over the course of a week, many things could happen. Yeah. So I'm just trying to come up with a word to fully capture the essence of that week. But there are many different episodes of things that happen in your daily life, the task that you're doing, which you could think on the spot, but you don't quite write down. You're just based on your memory. And then after a while, you might not capture it somewhere. So I'm just trying to capture this stuff so that at a micro level of each thing, it probably can get some nuggets out of that as well, rather than an overall thing. Because I think at a macro level, I am already practicing that. It's just trying to link back to how can we celebrate your daily lives more. I just want it to be a more meaningful way.
But what you're talking about is your system, how you're going to setting up right now.
Yeah, I think it's more like a micro thing that I'm trying to focus. Yeah. Because the macro thing, it's very clear. Your milestones that everybody's looking at, I think almost everybody's wired that way, right?
Why can't you just to be?
What
just
do you mean?
Be.
You can be. What I'm trying to do is to capture that B, the results of that B. So it'll be more conscious.
Writing a newsletter a week is pretty good as well. Or just write a one-liner per day. I think I read somewhere before, someone has done it. One of this guy, he just put an Excel spreadsheet and he tracked down like in years. Every day they just like the dates on one column and the second column just like one-liner on what he has done. What was the highlight on that day? So at the end of 1 year, he got 365 lines. He knew exactly what he has done. It's just like when you check out your credit card transaction, every single line of it when you go through at the end of the month, oh, this is the place I have been and what I have spent and with whom I was there. I know, just different system, you gotta check it out, what's good for you. I really need to catch myself in those moments and try to calm myself down. And what I also developed is that every single day I need to do something for myself. Not only my mind, my body, and my soul. So for my body, it's easiest. It's just like I need to go to CrossFit or go to yoga.
Okay.
And soul is more like before I go to sleep, I will think about, close my eyes and kind of meditate a little bit like what I have done today. Whichever moment that I am in the day, I will think about it consciously if I catch myself there. My mind, to learn something new, read something. So I try to follow that every single day. Of course, sometimes you don't manage that, which is okay as well. That's why the just be that part comes in. It's life, right?
Yeah, it's life. We're just really trying to make sense of the daily life more to celebrate the aspect of things. Because I feel that all the different milestones that we have, no doubt we are already celebrating a lot of that. So it'd be cool to give a little bit more attention to your daily life and make better sense and improve on that.
In the weeks to come, like where will be your progress, for instance, on this part, in between?
In between, yeah. So that's for me this week. How about you?
I still don't have a word, but I think through chatting or catching up, we can come up with a word itself.
Sure. Something that you're feeling.
I read about this book by one of these Taiwanese writer called Zhang Manjuan.
Okay.
Called 我辈中人. It's directly translated as people of our generation. In the book, she described that people of our generation means people who are in the midlife.
35 to 65.
Yeah, this range. That's what she classified. She herself is about 63 years old this year, I think. So she's a very prominent writer from Taiwan. Her profile is that she has always been writing since when she was young. I think she published her very first book at the age of 26, I think. And then she did a PhD in Chinese literature and language.
Okay.
And eventually she became like a professor. The reason why I read this book is because I needed something to put my mind at rest, at ease, let's call it this way. Because what's happening with the loved one of ours, I find it really hard to digest. And so I somehow randomly pick up this book from the bookshelf in the studies. I just kind of picked it up. And I remember 2 years ago when I had my burnouts, a friend of mine lent it to me in Berlin. I read it. But back then, the impression was very different because I was working back to myself, trying to get mentally and physically healthy.
Okay.
So that helps me in some way to engage, with the phase I was in. But what the book is about is actually talking about this author, her experience of taking care of her parents. So her dad is 10 years older than her mom. And her dad, I think she has a lot of problems like physically. So this author, Zhang Manjuan, she has always been rushing towards the hospital, whichever department, appointment with the doctor, the nurses, and just do the checkup with the medical staff all the time. And then during this process, her mom got dementia. She also learned through how to live with her mom in those situations, like how she conduct herself when the mom comes up to her and say, oh, when is your dad coming back, or have we eaten, or who are you, this kind of question. So I think that's another level. So in the book itself, I find this time around when I read it for the second time, it gave me a lot of courage and a lot of perspective, because someone who has walked this path and they share their experience, how they handle that, at the same time they can also carry on with their life. And that's something that I really appreciate. Even though towards the end she resigned from her professorship in a university, and she just kind of really focused in taking care of her both parents, their father and the mother, all by herself, because her brother somehow did not manage to participate in this process for whatever reason it was. And to this point, I think she's still taking care of her parents. I think the main point is that how do you carry on with your life, but at the same time integrate this taking care of your parents into your lifestyle as well. For most of the Westerner audience will be quite challenging to listen into, because for my personal experience, like in Germany, for instance, when people get old, they will be going into like a nursing home kind of. So what we're doing right now is that we're actually using our own hand and own energy, own time to do it. This is what Asian society is all about. Like if you have a loved one of yours who's very dear towards you fall sick, then you do your very best to take care of the person, especially the elders. And when you look back in Taiwan, we do the same thing as well, like uncle, like Jojo and Joma, for instance. They live in the same block. So the granny lives on the 7th floor. Every evening they will go, everybody will go up to the 7th floor, have the dinner with Amma, like our grandma. Our grandma is taken care by a helper from Indonesia, and she has been with her for the last, I don't know, more than 10 years, I think. So maybe that's also an option that we have to explore at some point of our life. You know, but what I'm talking about right now is this book helped me to see a perspective, or to consider an option that it's possible to integrate this part of taking care of your parents or your loved one into your life. But just how are you going to go about doing that? That's another thing. Not only like physically taking care, but your mental health, your time, your energy, financial wise, administrative wise, legalities are also involved. You know what I mean? So this is a new world, to be honest. After reading this book, it helped me to settle my thoughts a bit more. And I did highlight quite a lot of those lines whereby I want to write it down in Notion, for instance, and perhaps change it to a video, make a video out of it. But I do need to think about the story, what kind of story angle I want to tell about. Coming back to the word itself, what we're talking about right now, based on this book, 我辈中人 by Zhang Manjuan, it is integration.
Just out of curiosity, okay, this is the second time that you're reading this, and integration is the word of how you are feeling about this content right now. A couple of years ago, you read that. Back then, what was the word? Was it very different from integration altogether?
Back then, there was more letting go. Certain things I need to let go. There are days whereby right now I still think about it, but it's just not so vivid compared to before. So you need time factor to filter things through. But then right now, this book, having read it for the second time, integration is a good word for it, because I don't see it as an assimilation. I see it as integration, so one way getting it. Because the other direction, they have no choice. So it's up to you to actually cross over and to get there.
It's really very interesting when you read a book the second time, maybe a couple of years from now, you have all brand new feeling.
It is
altogether.
I think it always depends on which time frame that you are in, and also what are your life experiences that you have accumulated to that point, in your life. There's another book also, to this day, it gave me a lot of perspective. In the Lightness of Being, by this Czech writer. He wrote the book in French, and I read the book in both English and German. I remember reading when I was 18. A lot of things I didn't understand. But then I read it again when I was 22, and that was something different. And then again, towards the end, I think 27, when I was 27. Coming back to the topic, so for me, the word of the week is integration. For most of the audience out there, I mean, if you don't speak Mandarin Chinese, you probably will not get access to this book. But at some point, I'll make it into the story and to tell that, because I think it's really interesting to tell the story. Not only you can provide a cultural element inside, like how the Taiwanese society, for instance, look into taking care of your parents when they are at that stage of their life, and also how you integrate it into your own life, like a chicken soup.
Yeah, the nuggets, the wisdom that you can learn from things. You know, this integration, I was just thinking, because you brought out the idea about death, and then in relation to what I said just now was milestones. We celebrate milestones, birthday, birth of someone, death of someone. So likewise, as a parent, when you give birth, you start to integrate every single thing that you have towards taking care of that kid. So likewise, on the other end, you also do the same thing. It's just a role reversal. So that's something that just got into me. I was like, oh yeah, true. This integration can be applied the other way around as well.
I think for the audience who are listening to this episode right now or watching on YouTube, you can see more of the visual stuff here. Maybe write down in the comments below, like, what kind of healthcare system do you guys have back in your country or where you're from, and how do you guys actually approach this topic, like integrating of your life into a loved one of yours who is in need of be taken care of.
Concerns, be it emotional, physical.
That'll be really interesting to do the exchange there, because
explore a little bit further.
We're also like learning by doing at the moment.
Yep. So it'd be cool for any of the audience and the viewers to share their thoughts and their experience with us as well.
Okie dokie. So with that, we come to the end of this episode, and the words for this week's are in between and integration.
Yes.
And thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us.
Yes.
If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, comment, and like. It will help us a lot for the algorithm.
Be kind to yourself.
Don't forget to smile and keep each other company. We shall see you in the very next episode. Ciao, ciao. Cheers.
Bye.
When I'm going to drink, we have not had our frisky for a long time. Friday whiskey.
Maybe
we're going to a restaurant, a vegan restaurant here in Singapore. One of my favorites called Afterglow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.